Hello and welcome. Did you know that Jonsbo C6 has 3 variants? In this video, I would like to show you the Jonsbo C6 family. There are 3 of them. The first and the original one is Jonsbo C6, and then they introduced C6 ITX version half a year later. Then finally C6 Max another half a year later. I am going to show you each of them and list pros and cons. Let's begin with the original C6, which is still my favorite of all cases. I've created a simple Blender model to show you the internal layout of the case. For your information, this is a 16 liters case, which is considered large for a small form factor case. However, this case has a crucial advantage over other SFF cases. It is that you can fit a micro ATX motherboard in it, allowing you to bypass the ITX tax while still having a relatively small case. Bypassing the ITX tax bit can be very important to some because in 2025 you pay a lot, I mean sometimes 3 digits more, for an ITX motherboard compared to a micro ATX motherboard. That money could be spent for something else, like a better GPU, so it's completely understandable if one wants to avoid the ITX tax. Due to its layout, this case limits you what CPU you may use. 125 watts or lower TDP CPU is recommended, so something like Ryzen 12 and 16 cores CPUs or Intel 14900K CPU should not be used in this case unless you enjoy CPU cooking for some reason. Your GPU length is limited to about 24 centimeters as well, but you have a fair number of options for that length. Basically, you cannot install top-of-the-line components in there and expect it to work due to size and thermal constraints. Next we have is C6 ITX, which was released about half a year after the original C6 was released. On surface, this ITX version looks virtually identical to its older brother, but the internal layout is quite different. In this version, you are now forced to use an ITX motherboard. In doing so, it relocates the power supply to the front, allowing you to use a beefy tower CPU cooler. This lifts the CPU limit you previously had with the original C6. However, your GPU is now limited to about 20 centimeters due to power supply cables. If you use a SFX power supply, you are barely able to squeeze in a GPU up to 24 centimeters in length. Essentially, you are now forced to spend a lot more to maximize your PC potential because an ITX motherboard costs more, and so does a SFX power supply. And now here is C6 Max, the final form of C6. This is a 21 liters case, making it barely a small form factor case at this point. C6 Max carries on the same design philosophy, and that unfortunately makes this case somewhat flawed in my opinion because this case, in spite of being 21 liters in volume, has no cable management feature. What they did was simply extrude the depth of C6 and call it a day. They did nothing to address C6's shortcomings. The internal design of C6 Max is largely that of C6 ITX, but the depth has been extended to a point that you no longer have any GPU length limit. Essentially, you are no longer limited by neither CPU nor GPU. That sounds good on paper. However, the C6 frame does not feature enough space in the back to hide cables. Perhaps they were aware and used a semi-window side panel to hide most of cables from eyes. Regardless, all it could have taken was about 1 centimeter of extra width for the space, although I do admit that it may require a substantial redesign of the whole frame. They perhaps did not want to spend more in R&D. Personally, the original C6 remains to be my favorite in the end. This is simply due to the fact that I can avoid the ITX tax, which makes more sense than ever in this economy. You can use every component in your existing PC if you are using a micro ATX motherboard. In contrast, C6 ITX requires a new motherboard and possibly a new power supply. If you already have the components, C6 ITX can offer much more performance in the same package. Now C6 Max is for those who want a top-tier GPU. However, there are better choices if you are considering C6 Max. For example, Jonsbo D32 is a better case and cheaper as well. And there are smaller cases that supports top-tier GPUs also. In the end, I am wholly against C6 Max. So, that is it for my Jonsbo C6 family explained. I thank you for watching and see you next time.